Hip hip, tally ho, Joolz Guides here, in which I wander around various London neighbourhoods. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like these videos. Today we are back in Chelsea, and I know that you may have seen my video about King's Road before, but that after all was quite a long time ago when I was a bit wet around the gills. So we're going to do it a bit more extensively this time. So we're starting here on King's Road at the end in Sloane Square, and then there's this lovely statue of Venus here. On the pedestal, it's hard to see with all the water and everything, but that's King Charles II and his favourite mistress, Nell Gwyn, because actually the King's Road is named after it being the King's route down to kind of Kew and the palaces down there. It was a private road up until 1830. Viewers of my previous video about King's Road will know my obsession with Columbo, because that is the Royal Court Theatre, that's where they do the murder in Dagger of the Mind, the Columbo episode when he comes to London. Well, Honor Blackman is one of the murderers. And it's right next to Sloane Square station, which on the platform level you can see the River Westbourne. So the River Westbourne starts up sort of in Hampstead Heathish area, and it runs all the way down through the Serpentine in Hyde Park, and then it goes through a pipe above the station platforms here, and then you can see it going out into the Thames. Yeah, also sadly this was the place where Peter Llewellyn Davis committed suicide in the 60s. He was the person after whom Peter Pan was named. The Llewellyn Davis brothers were the ones that J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan, befriended in Kensington Gardens and then wrote with Peter Pan, and he hated his association with it, as did a lot of them, I think, and he ended up committing suicide, throwing himself on the train here. It's very sad. The whole story of it is very sad.
Yes.
But we are heading that way. It's all very posh around here these days. I mean, back in the 60s, the whole of King's Road was where mods used to hang out, and then punks in the 70s and stuff, but it's really become gentrified. I mean, back before they turned it into a public highway in 1830, Chelsea was pretty much just an isolated village. Now you've got the Saatchi Gallery over there, which is all very, very nice. We're not going to cover everything, because it's just way too much stuff. But over here, actually, there's something interesting. So I'm just heading off King's Road here, just onto Anderson Street. And look, but number 4 over there, that's where Karl Marx used to live, only for a short while. He was evicted from there with his family, and then the bailiffs showed up. And it was quite an embarrassing moment for him, because all the neighbours watched whilst all his stuff was chucked out into the street. Not a bad address. He had quite a few good addresses. And it's just around the corner from, so there's a lot of stuff around here. The McDonald's here used to be the Chelsea drugstore, the one that the Rolling Stones sing about, you know. I went down to the Chelsea drugstore to get my prescription filled. They had food, they had a chemist, they had a record shop, and lots of other little kind of areas where people used to hang out in the 60s, before it was such a kind of gentrified area. And they had the flying squad service, so it was quite cool. If you wanted your goods delivered by hand by some hot women wearing catsuits on a motorcycle, you could ask for the flying squad service and they'd deliver it. But anyway, so you might recognise it from Clockwork Orange as well, they go in there. Although I'm not wearing my bowler hat today, that would have been more appropriate. So I would have looked like him and his droogs.
And a jockstrap.
It's actually one of these streets around here that they say James Bond lived in. I mean, it was described as being one of the roads off King's Road. You can imagine it. When you come to the Royal Borough of Kensington, Chelsea, you get these wonderful lampposts. Lovely green lampposts, and they've got the motif there, look, Royal Borough of Kensington, Chelsea on it. Same on the bollards. Yeah, you're right, I should wear a jock strap as well for this, like on the outside of my trousers, like he does in Clockwork Orange. That would look much more stylish. Now, over here on the corner, Joe and the Juice coming up here, I thought I was being all clever knowing that this was where Mary Quant had her shop bazaar as her boutique. She was credited with, did she invent the miniskirt? Anyway, she was quite instrumental in popularising or possibly inventing the miniskirt. She had this wonderful boutique there. And downstairs they had this restaurant called Alexander's. Bridget Bardot used to go there, Audrey Hepburn. This was like the cool place to hang out and go and sort of. But now they've gone and put these plaques everywhere. You don't really need me to show you around. You just go and walk around, follow the plaques, like just opposite. This is where the author of Mary Poppins lived. Look, P.L. Travers. I wonder if that's where she wrote it. Now look again, I know we spoke about this in the last one, right? The pheasantry here, it gets its name from some fella back in the 18th century who used to breed all sorts of pheasants and foxes and all sorts of different things here. But this actual building isn't from the 18th century, this is from the 19th century. It also turned into a ballet school where Margot Fontaine trained for a while. And they got a lovely picture up there of King Charles.
Oh yeah.
Is that his queen? It was also flats where George Harrison and Eric Clapton once were staying, and they had to escape out the window during a drugs bust. But it was here, when it was a venue, that Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber discovered Yvonne Elliman, who played Mary Magdalene in Jesus Christ Superstar. They spotted her here. I don't know how to love him. I mean, these days it's just a Pizza Express. It's a very fancy Pizza Express, isn't it?
I have to say, Pizza Express is very good. It's the only pizza you can have without having to put ketchup on. Yeah.
Do not put ketchup.
You do on
anywhere
most
near a
pizzas
pizza,
from
please.
England. You do because there is no taste in the tomato.
This building here, this is where the photograph was taken for the front cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The Beatles went in there somewhere. It was all the people that they liked the most, people that they admired were going to be on there. I mean, Alistair Crowley
I was
made
going
it.
to say, Alistair Crowley, a demonic Satan worshipper, Satanist man. Yeah, he made it.
Yeah, that's
He
right.
made it.
But it's just opposite this Gaumont building. You see this one on the other side of the road? It's from the 1930s. Originally it was the Gaumont Palace Cinema. See the little roundels at the top, one of them is William Freeze Green, because this was built on the site of his original studio, and he was one of the pioneers of moving picture. One of the earliest films ever made actually was called Traffic on King's Road, filmed in 1891 down here. It's very nice Bauhaus aesthetic, Simon.
Yeah,
I know
think
you'll
so,
appreciate
yes.
that.
Yeah,
Like a bit of a Bauhaus.
German looking. Yeah.
Look at this beautiful town hall here. So obviously people get married. Someone's getting married at the moment, in fact. One of the most famous people who got married, though, the Roman Polanski, when he got married to Sharon Tate. She's the one who got murdered by Charles Manson. You know, that horrific event, which was reimagined by Quentin Tarantino in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Do you remember? Have you seen that film? A lot of people don't realise he was married to her. They associate him with other nefarious activities, of which we will not discuss. He directed
Chinatown.
Chinatown. I was going to say Frantic with Harrison Ford. That also, Judy Garland got married here, and Mrs. Wallis Simpson. So you know Mrs. Wallis Simpson, who was married to King Edward VIII? So she became Mrs. Wallis Simpson in this town hall when she married someone by the name of Simpson or whatever, and then got married to King Edward VIII or something. Confusing.
We've got a wonky, telephone box with an empty bottle of wine next to it. It looks like it's had a drink or two.
It's on the wall.
You know?
Look at this little funny house here, Simon. I don't know much about it other than it's a little one-bedroom house. It's a perfect little spot. I'd love to live in there, actually. It's right opposite what used to be the Anchor Brewery back in the 18th century, which was started by someone else, but then John Charrington joined them around 1766. They actually brewed beer up until around 1975.
Yeah, it's nice they kept the gatehouse there, the arch.
Yeah, I like that. This is St. Luke's. You might recognise it from 101 Dalmatians, the Disney version, where they come here. And also in Captain America Civil War, is where they have the funeral in there. All right, Simon. I'm not interested.
I roll.
Just because you're not interested.
Oh,
all right,
my Lord.
well, I'll try Charles Dickens then. Charles Dickens married 20-year-old Catherine there. He was quite young at the time as well, who he then went on to father 10 children with. But then he blamed her for the fact that he had so many children. It's a bit outrageous that you have 10 children with someone, that you blame them for it. And he accused her of being mad and not being a good enough housemaid. And he ran off with that 18-year-old Ellen Ternan eventually. That did not endear him to a lot of his friends. They disapproved. He sounded like a bit of a cad to me, Dickens. But the building of this church was the idea of the Duke of Wellington's brother, who was the rector of Chelsea. It's lovely here, isn't it? Nice time of year we're doing this.
It is, yeah.
All the blossoms.
All the flowers and blossom, yeah.
I don't know how to love him. What to say. Looks a bit inauspicious, doesn't it? This is actually the Chelsea Arts Club. That was founded in 1891 by a bunch of artists who wanted a place to hang out and socialise other than in sort of artist studios, and sometimes we play snooker against them, and they've got their snooker table is right in the bar, surrounded by all these people. So there's all sorts of distractions, people coming past, jogging you, you know, distracting you, you're trying to play your shot. It's completely different from somewhere like the RAC, where it's all like, you know, excuse me, could you stop twitching please whilst I play my shot, you know. It's complete. I'd love to know what the RAC guys think when they come to play these guys at snooker. Legend has it that any artist, if you can prove that you're an actual artist, you can go up and knock on the door and they'll let you in, but I don't know, I feel bad saying it now, all these artists are going to go. Anyway, Simon, don't go and knock on the door, please. I know you're an artist. It'll just be embarrassing.
It's just that, why is it always like, you know, the author of Mary Poppins, the author of Winnie the Pooh, so on, so on. They always lived in these beautiful places. It's never like some horrible rundown council estate.
Well, that's because he made absolutely millions from doing it, didn't he? No, that's the house there. No, okay. This beautiful building here with the lovely, can you see it there, the tiles? Yeah. And this lovely cow up there. This used to be a dairy. That's what became later the Sound Technics studio. Bands like Jethro Tull, Elton John performed there, and that is where Pink Floyd did their first single, Arnold Lane. Arnold Lane.
The Pink Floyd when it's Sid Barrett.
Sid Barrett,
in
yeah,
the band.
The original Pink Floyd
Right,
was
okay.
Sid Barrett. That's
Okay,
so he was
right.
on the Relics album, which was,
Right.
I think, their first one with Sid Barrett.
Yeah.
That had songs like Interstellar Overdrive and I've got a bike, you can ride it. Anyway, they did Arnold Lane in there. I don't know if they did the whole album. Arnold Lane had a strange hobby. Collecting clothes, moonshine, washing line. Now, Chelsea's all very lovely and everything, but notice if you step backwards, Simon, you're going to tread onto a bag of poo,
Yeah,
which someone has
it will pop.
conveniently left
It would
there.
pop.
And it will explode onto your
you
leg.
and me.
So someone has very considerately decided to leave that there on the floor rather than just putting it in the bin. And sometimes you see them hanging in trees, don't you? Someone hangs it in a tree, you're like, why did you do that?
They just sling it up there like a slingshot or something. I don't know.
Oh dear, Chelsea. Not what it was, Simon. Just down here on the right, we're not going to walk past them, but that's where some of the oldest houses in the street are. I think they're from the 18th century, I guess before it became a public road. Carol Reed, the famous director who directed The Third Man and Oliver.
Oliver, yeah.
Yeah, the uncle of Oliver Reed. He used to live down there, along with Peter Ustinov, who asked my mum out, by the way. Anyway, but we're going this way. Let's just try and get into the sun here so you can see my face. So lovely. This was built in 1924 for the Bluebird Company. It was regarded as the biggest garage in Europe. It had 300 spaces for cars, and Malcolm Campbell, who famously attempted to break the world speed record many times in his Bluebird, he used to store his cars here.
It's still very distinctive as a garage, you know, that style, that look.
Anyway, it's a restaurant anyway. I think it used to be Terence Conrad.
Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I had a friend that he worked here as a waiter. His name was Marty. Every night he'd come back and he'd always talk about the different celebrities he'd see here.
Should we eat there later?
Yeah.
Come on, let's go.
What are you laughing about?
You'll be lucky. Actually, just over here on the corner, that pub there, well, it used to be the Roebuck, the Beaufort House. That's the one where John Lydon met other members of the Sex Pistols. First of all, he had met Malcolm McLaren in the shop Sex, which we are going to in a moment. What's it called these days? The sex shop where Malcolm McLaren met John Lydon. Anyway, we went to that shop. Yeah. Cut to Vintage Joolz, talking about that. Vintage from 8 years ago, this is. So here at number 430 King's Road is the famous shop that used to be called Let It Rock. It was opened by Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren back in the 1970s, and that's exactly where they launched the Sex Pistols from in 1975.
This used to be called Sex or Seditionaries. Now it's World's End. It's the most famous shop on King's Road. It's number 430, and it's owned by Vivienne Westwood. Adam Ant, everyone comes here. Blondie still comes here. Cass from Skunk and Hazy. But yeah, so hello. So yeah, very famous shop with very famous visitors. So that's the mountain hat from the 80s.
Nice. Well, that looks like a kind of Boy George hat.
That's the same era.
Yeah.
It's still handmade in London.
Nice.
It's a little Alice in Wonderland store, very tiny, but very powerful and really influential in the history of London fashion. Also with Galliano and McQueen, Vivienne is a clear influence on them as well. So yeah, visit us.
I really do feel like Gulliver in here. That is massive. The size of that.
That would suit you.
Yeah, nice.
It is a men's shirt. This is Sex Pistols wore this as well.
Yeah, it does seem familiar. Thank you. Oh, see ya.
No, it didn't look like that when we went.
It did. Well, it did. It did have the clock.
Looks like Willy Wonka lives there now.
Yeah, it looks kind of. This is wonderful. Look at this. This is the Moravian burial ground. They've been burying people here since the 1750s. The Moravians were a Protestant group who came originally from the Czech Republic. And look, the gravestones are all the same size. They're all flat down on the ground like this. And I think the idea of that is it represents everyone being equal. No one person has a bigger gravestone than anybody else. And it's actually built on what used to be the stables of Beaufort House, owned by Sir Thomas More, the Chancellor of King Henry VIII, but we're coming to his house later on. But yeah, I mean, he owned a vast area of land around here. In 1969, there were these two Aussie blokes who had bought a lion from Harrods in 1969, because you could do that back in those days. You could buy animals from Harrods. And he became quite a local celebrity. They lived above a shop, a furniture shop called Sophisticats on King's Road. And they quite often, you could see them sort of walking around, parading this lion up and down, and they'd often walk it around in here, which I think is very cute. It's known as God's Acre. Anyway, if you're lucky, the doors will be open and you can pop in and have a little look. Another sad sight, the World's End pub, another closed down pub. Let's hope it opens up again. But this area around here is called World's End, named after a tavern that was somewhere around here, because I suppose it felt a bit like the World's End before this became a public road. It's just like a village, a hamlet in the middle of nowhere. I'm not going any further up King's Road. We're going to swing around and head back along Cheyne Walk down the river. But it's a good opportunity for me to say, did you know that I have a book out? I don't know if I mentioned that. My new book, rather splendid London pub walks. Don't forget to check the links below and sort of order a copy of that. And also, big thank you to all those people who donate to my channel. I don't thank everybody enough, but it's really highly appreciated, because you can donate via Patreon or PayPal or just using the credit card on my website. And you know, it helps to buy a crust of bread for Simon and keep me in the beers and pay for all the things that we do, the production costs. So that's really highly appreciated. So thanks for that, because no one actually officially pays me to do these videos. And so please do continue to donate if you can. And now we've just turned around the corner here and we're just next to this Greaves Tower here. You see this, Simon? You know who used to live in here? Was Joe Strummer from The Clash. And in that song, London Calling, where he's got London calling from a far way down, I don't know the words, but there's the bit where he goes, London is drowning and I live by the river. That's because he lived by the river here. He was about to come to the river. He lived up there. How about that? This used to be famous pleasure gardens, where they would have balloon ascents and pavilions and all sorts of activities from, yes, look, from 1846 to 1877. All the information about it here. Famously, there was Madame Saki. She did a tightrope walk across the Thames from here. And eventually it closed down because there was too much prostitution, pickpockets, you name it. But this is all that really remains, this little green patch of what was the Cremorne pleasure gardens. It was a huge, much bigger area, and these gates used to appear at the King's Road end of it. So it's nice that they've restored them. They're rather good, those. You don't get points for blue plaques in Joolz Guides, but as we all know, you do get points for stink pipes. And I tell you what, there's a lot of stink pipes along this route today. Look, behold, rather a large one coming up right now, in fact, this stink pipe. Right opposite, two more blue plaques. I don't know much about Hilaire Belloc, but I like the quotation, "I'm not afraid of life, I'm not afraid of death. I'm only afraid of living without a cellar full of wine and the society of those who love me." James Whistler, and there's a statue of him over here somewhere. Oh look, that's where he painted that famous painting of his mother. It's now, you can see it in the Musée d'Orsay. Is it in Paris? I must say, Albert Bridge is probably my favourite bridge across the Thames. I don't know about you, I think it's possibly my favourite. We talk about that in my Battersea video, but we're actually standing right opposite Crosby Moran Hall, and it's an extraordinary building. It's hard to believe that this used to stand in the City of London. So it's built in 1466, and they say that it's where King Richard III was offered the crown, not on this location, when it was over in the City of London. And later in the 1530s, Sir Thomas More moved into it. He was the Lord High Chancellor of King Henry VIII, then had his head chopped off. Anyway, he used to live in it. But what's amazing is it got demolished in the 20th century over in the city, and they transferred it brick by brick to here. But what's quite a coincidence is that they transported it onto land which also once belonged to Sir Thomas More. Now, when Sir Thomas More was beheaded, his daughter saved the head and preserved it in spices, and when she later died, aged 39, she was buried with her father's head. It's a bit gory, isn't it? Anyway, his house was around here. He had a massive house called Beaufort House, and he used to sing in the choir here. And I read also that King Henry VIII married Jane Seymour privately here in a ceremony before he did the grand proper ceremony. Yeah, so they actually already got secretly married here. Look at this. And this was cast in Coalbrookdale. Do you remember I was talking about Coalbrookdale, where the Industrial Revolution all started up? Coalbrookdale. Anyone who has studied the Industrial Revolution will know about that. I don't know. I think they might represent light or something. Or they could just be a whimsical addition to this rather nice lamp.
Oh, look at that. It works.
Points to me. Points to me. There we go. Wonderful. So, continuing along Cheyne Walk here, we've got another dwelling where Sir Ian Fleming used to live, in that one there. That's a lovely building, isn't it? These mansion blocks look tremendous. Carlisle Mansions, that's called. In fact, I think that's where he wrote Casino Royale on a typewriter, which was gold-plated apparently. A little bit further along, this is the location of King Henry VIII's manor house. Look, these buildings along here, obviously it got knocked down in the 1700s. Ideally, he wanted to give it to Jane Seymour as a wedding present, but she died because she was divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. So the one who survived was Catherine Parr. He did end up giving it to her. King Henry VIII's manor house stood here until 1753 when it was demolished. And what's interesting is, see, I like this along here. This is a nice sign of the good old days. Caution, all drivers of vehicles are directed to walk their horses while passing under this archway. That's quite nice. And behind the back wall, there are still apparently some mulberry trees which were planted by Queen Elizabeth I when she stayed here. I love being able to put a location to these faces from years ago, you know? 1877, you know, we've been talking about this artist, James Whistler. I mean, he commissioned someone to build a house for him here. But unfortunately, he never got to occupy the house because he ended up in this big legal dispute with John Ruskin, the art critic. It was over this one of his paintings, the Nocturne in black and gold. And it was quite a good painting, in my opinion. I think it's quite good. But John Ruskin had said, "I have seen and heard much of Cockney impudence before now, but never expected to hear a coxcomb ask 200 guineas for flinging a pot of paint in the public's face." And so old Whistler must have been rather offended. Whistler won the case, but he only got 1 farthing or something damages, so he could never occupy the house. And I think it was later knocked down anyway, so I think this is a different one. Just walking up here a bit further along Tite Street, look at this, number 34, Oscar Wilde's house. I believe it was here where there was some party or something and someone made a very witty remark. I think it was James Whistler. And Oscar Wilde said to Mr. Whistler, "Oh, I wish I had said that." And James Whistler said, "Oh, you will, Oscar, you will." It must have been because there were so many artists around here. I wonder if that's what gave him the idea of writing the picture of Dorian Gray, which he wrote in this house. Anyway, hopefully we can go inside.
Hello, welcome to Oscar Wilde's house.
Excellent.
In Oscar's day, the door was white, which was considered very lower class, and he did that to annoy the hoity-toity neighbours. There's the original boot scrape that Oscar would clean his boots on. This is the interior archway, and if you notice, the glass in the arch is yellow because Victorian colour symbolism, yellow referred to sin. So when the sun comes in the window there, this whole corridor glows yellow, and I just love to imagine Oscar walking in bathed in sin. This was his dining room. The whole house was his. So it was paid for by his wife Constance's money, because after his year tour in America, he came back here, stole Constance from Bram Stoker.
So he stole Bram Stoker's girlfriend?
Yeah, that's right.
So everyone
Stole Dracula's girlfriend.
Right.
He was quite a ladies' man.
Yeah. And this is Constance here, who was blasted in the press for being plain.
She's quite pretty.
Very pretty.
I think that's a good pull, Oscar.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't even realise that Oscar Wilde was married or had kids.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
you know.
But he did love Constance, and he talked about her as his intellectual equal. The walls were white and the ceiling was blue with cloud effect. And in here, many famous people have come to eat with Oscar Wilde. This is the room in which Oscar first met Bosie.
The son of the Marquess of Queensberry.
Yeah.
He wasn't very happy about his son
being
being
gay.
gay and going out with him, right?
Yeah. So actually, the Marquess turned up here one day, and between Oscar and Oscar's butler, they forced the Marquess out.
Wow. This is where the hanky panky took place.
The full collection of the yellow books. So this was considered very pushing the boundaries, this publication. So it had suggestive stories, poetry and illustrations considered improper.
Honestly, Aubrey Beardsley died when he was 25, and look at this extraordinary artwork. They sort of fell out a bit at the end, didn't they? And he started putting kind of weird comedy pictures of Oscar Wilde in the corners of his drawings and stuff.
Yeah, that's Oscar Wilde there, look. I wonder if that's the attic where the very picture of Dorian Gray was painted. This is the Chelsea Physic Garden. It was founded in 1673 by the Worshipful Society of Apothecaries, who cultivated these medicinal plants here to train their apprentices. Look at this grapefruit here, tremendous. This is the northernmost growing grapefruit tree in the world. They've got some remarkable records in here. They've also got the biggest olive tree that bears fruit in Britain, which is over there.
This one.
Is that this one?
Yeah.
Almost all of the plants in here are either medicinal, herbal or edible. Look, this one for treating the joints, rheumatology, these ones. Withania somnifera, an aphrodisiac and tonic herb used to improve vitality for over 4,000 years. I think I could do a bit of that. And this one, cannabis sativa, was used in the treating of cancer, look. many people believe that cannabis has healing properties, but also, back in the Renaissance times, the hemp plant was used to create sails for ships, and any surplus they had was also used as canvas for the painters. That's where they get the word canvas from, the Latin word for cannabis, which was cannabius or cannabaceus or something. These shells are from Tahiti. So I very highly recommend my other video on my channel called Take Me to Pitcairn, in which I go to Tahiti. But what's amazing is that this was presumably brought back with Captain Cook's ship, or one of these voyages to Tahiti to bring back plants. I didn't know that lily of the valley was poisonous. That's my favourite plant. My face is going a bit close to this. You've got to be careful if you're tall. Especially this one, because this is actually hemlock. This is the one that killed Socrates. He was forced to drink hemlock, and that's how he died. Look at that little fella there. That's a Venus flytrap. You see him there? Look. So the fly goes into there, and then he snaps shut. This tree, they call it the Judas tree because it's supposed to be the type of tree from which Judas hanged himself. Quite rare actually to have the pink blooms and the green leaves at the same time on this, so we're here at a good time. You know, what's amazing about this place is that this is the last place in London or in Britain that Wilfred Owen, the famous war poet, spent his last hours here at the Chelsea Physic Garden before heading back to the front and then really sadly dying in virtually the last week of World War I. So he almost got away with it, but poor fella died. What passing bells for these who die as cattle, only the monstrous anger of the guns, only the stuttering rifles' rapid rattle. Speaking of the war, by the way, I've had a lot of people asking where this tie came from in my last video about Woolwich. Well, 10 points to all those people who spotted that it is the Royal Tank Regiment. I rather like it. I think I'm going to wear it more often. We saw the Royal Hospital Chelsea from the other end at King's Road. We could see this lovely view down the Royal Avenue there. Old Christopher Wren, he really knew what he was doing, didn't he? I mean, look at that, that's later, and that was in 1682. He also did the Royal Naval Hospital College, whatever it is, down in Greenwich. They say it was Nell Gwyn's idea. She persuaded King Charles II to have this Royal Hospital built for his veteran soldiers. But just a little further along there, by the way, it's the grave of Margaret Thatcher. Well, actually her ashes, she was cremated. One of the most important political figures in British history. Anyway, we're going this way. Cheers, Simon.
Cheers, sir.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like the videos. It's very important. It helps me look good, helps me to get on Strictly Come Dancing. And don't forget to go and buy my amazing new book, Joolz Guides, Rather Splendid London Pub Walks, available in all good bookshops. And check out my website, joolzguides.com, where you can find out more about me, leave donations, all sorts of things. There are plenty more videos on there. See you next time.